Good morning. Good afternoon. We'd like to call the Finance Committee meeting to order, please. Are there any public comments, Doug?
No, sir, no public speakers today.
Okay. Then we'd like to, first order of business would be the approval of the minutes of our April 22nd meeting. May I please have a motion? Second, please. All in favor?
Aye.
Minutes are so approved. Doug, committee work plan?
If there's no change to the work plan today?
Okay. And then would you please take us into Budget Watch?
Sure. The June Budget Watch, obviously this month's meeting is early in the month. It's going to focus on April operating results and May subsidy results. Start with the revenues. Passenger revenues were slightly favorable for April, 1.4 million, reflecting higher than projected New York City transit ridership, which was partially offset by lower than expected commuter rail ridership. Year-to-date numbers are slightly unfavorable, that was 6.4 million, however reflecting unfavorable results earlier in the year due to harsh winter weather and the residual impacts of Sandy. Toll revenues is a better story. They're favorable for the month of 5.8 million and year-to-date 12.4 million, and that's due to higher traffic attributable to higher New York City employment and lower than forecasted impacts on traffic from the toll increase that just went into effect. Operating expenses were slightly unfavorable for the month, 7.9 million, and that decreased the favorable year-to-date variance to $74.5 million. Most of that favorable variance was due to timing-related activity in other than personal service expense categories, which we think will be reversed later in the year. Favorable year-to-date debt service costs were $3 million favorable, reflecting refunding savings and lower interest rates that were mostly offset by an advance payment of TRB debt service. So that will actually become favorable next month. Moving to subsidies, real estate tax subsidies were unfavorable in May by $10.4 million. This reduced the favorable year-to-date variance to $75 million. The unfavorable variance for the month reflects below budget collections from the real property transfer tax portion of the urban tax. That same category accounts for more than half of the favorable year-to-date variance. The results have been sort of up and down, mostly up, but not in any consistent manner. We don't see this as being a trend at this time. January, February, and April results were very strong. March and May results were below budget. April would not have been favorable had 3 large transactions not occurred, so we don't really see a trend in this. They're up and down with a lot of inconsistency. Offsetting what is still a net favorable real estate tax situation were unfavorable receipts in some of the other tax categories. In total, those taxes were $66 million unfavorable year-to-date through May. The main causes are PMT, which is $34 million unfavorable, PBT, which is $27 million unfavorable year-to-date, and MTA Aid, which is $9 million unfavorable year-to-date. So to sum up, April results were slightly unfavorable due mainly to lower subsidy collections. Year-to-date results were favorable due mainly to lower expenses. However, that variance was primarily the result of timing delays, like I said earlier, in non-labor categories. Accepting those timing delays, we believe that the results are closely tracking the budget. Any questions?
Yes, Doug. I'd like to highlight something which I think has been a continuing problem and is really starting to affect our expense savings, and this particular item is definitely been put into our budget, and we're counting on not only meeting the budget but saving money in something, and that's overtime. If you look at overtime, we've said that it's storm related, and it's true, a lot of this was storm related, but now even in the month of April you'll see that we've been running over substantially in overtime, and I think that not only does this affect this year's budget, but obviously it can affect things like pension as we go forward. And I think it's time that we do a real review of where these expenses and overtime are coming from, and if in fact what we can do to try and alleviate this situation going forward. And at the pre-finance committee meeting, Bob and Doug and I were talking about this, and Bob, maybe you could tell us what you think we can do in order to get our handle on it and review it with Tom. Obviously, Tom wasn't at the meeting, and I think it should be reviewed with Tom, of course, but some of the other presidents of the agencies, and see where we go from here, because it's starting to become a real major factor, and it's going to hurt our budget going forward.
Well, we do get monthly reports from each of the agencies highlighting the variances, and there's, to remind ourselves, there is good overtime and then there's bad overtime. There's certain things which it's scheduled overtime because net it's the most efficient way of operating. So we'll ask each of the agencies to go through and give us a very thorough analysis for the July meeting. We will go through and look at that and review it with Tom.
Right. Tom, obviously, in fairness to Tom wasn't at the pre-finance committee meeting, and of course, I think it's very important for him to put his input and see how he feels about it. But this is something that I think needs an analysis done.
Sure.
And so then we'll have, after reviewing it with Tom, we'll have a presentation that we can make at the appropriate time.
And we're going to put it on the July agenda, is that?
Yeah, if you would like, and chair and designate. Sure, we can get
However
it.
you want to do it.
Okay.
It doesn't really matter. I think that's Tom's call.
No,
I just think it's important that we really look at this thing and, in fact, see if there's something we can do to alleviate this going forward. And I think it needs to be highlighted, and I think emphasis needs to be put on it. But I think it's your call how we do it, Tom.
No, I think we do it in July, because if you wait too much longer, there's not enough time left in the year to make any corrections that have meaningful.
And it's our budget, and it's a good
It is.
time to do it
Yes.
because we're going to be reviewing the interim budget at that point in time. That's why I thought that would be good. Right, is that?
Yeah, isn't this a lot of this, Bob, though, due to the fact that if we hired new employees, we'd be paying full boat with their plans, and if we let an existing employee have the overtime, it actually comes out cheaper?
Well, we do have a number of vacancies.
Because you're only paying time and a half, so you're
Right,
paying, go ahead.
Yeah, we do have a number of vacancies, and so that's the kind of evaluation that takes place. There is a certain amount of understaffing that it might be more efficient to use overtime to pay for, but that's what we'd be asking the operating agencies to go through and make sure that, in
Right.
fact, this is not just something that's kind of we've slipped into, but it truly is the most efficient way to do it. So we will be asking them to come through and look at this and give us the evaluation on where we need to be.
That'll be part of the evaluation.
That's right.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
I assume that's acceptable to my fellow board members. I think it's something we should look at. And I think the finance committee should look at it, and it certainly should be done while we're doing the interim budget, because I think this is a major fact that, and something that's going over in our budget this year.
Is it true that a lot of this is Sandy related, however?
Yeah. One of the advantages of doing the analysis is to separate out exactly what is happening, and I think it's key to do, because if we just allow one-off explanations to cover a lot in, that doesn't necessarily do the process justice. So we really need to take a look at it.
Should be added. Okay. Finance watch,
Yeah, if there are no more,
Finish with
if there are no more questions for Budget Watch, Paula Sayers is filling in for Pat McCoy. He's going to bring us through Finance Watch. Push that button down.
Good afternoon. Finance Watch begins on page Roman 4-1 today. Since the last time the board met, MTA entered into one fuel hedge, locking in a price of $2.77 per gallon for approximately 3.2 million gallons of ultra-low sulfur diesel. The hedge was bid on April 23rd to our approved list of counterparties and was won in a tie between Deutsche Bank and J. Aaron. The hedge was awarded in equal amounts and on a prorated basis over the term of the hedge. On May 8th, MTA remarketed 50 million Series 2012 A1 transportation revenue bonds. These bonds were converted from a term rate mode to a fixed rate mode to maturity. Given the size, structure, and timing of the transaction, MTA competitively bid this remarketing, receiving a total of 17 bids, with J.P. Morgan winning that bid. The structure consisted of $50 million bullet due in 2040. The maturity carried a 3.56% yield with an all-in tick of 429. And Nixon Peabody served as bond counsel, and Lamont Financial Services served as FA. Moving on to last week, we successfully priced a $500 million Series 2013 C transportation revenue bonds. These bonds were issued to fund ongoing approved capital projects for both transit and commuter needs. The transaction was led by J.P. Morgan, and Loop Capital Markets served as a co-senior, and both of those were as part of our regular rotation process. Hawkins, Delafield, and Wood is serving as bond counsel, and Lamont Financial is serving as FA. We had a strong retail order period for that transaction on Wednesday and significant institutional interest on Thursday. That allowed us to favorably reprice a significant part of the loan. The resulting highest yield was a 417 in 2043, and the transaction had an all-in tick of 4.25. This transaction is expected to close June 11th. One item that is not in the book was the successful closing of a $100 million revolving loan facility with KeyBank. It's the second facility closed this year for purposes of providing additional funding capacity for our approved capital program, and it brings that capacity up to about $450 million at this point. We continue to work on increasing this capacity, and we'll update the board as we do so. And then lastly, the MTA is sending out an RFP to solicit new underwriting group. Our last team was chosen after the 2010 process, and we have now rotated completely through that group. We expect the request to be out within a few weeks and hope to complete this process by late summer, early fall. And that's all I have here. If there are any questions. Thank you.
Next, we're going to move to MTA headquarters and all agency items. There is one action item, the 2013 State Public Work Enforcement Fund Assessment. We are asking the board to authorize a sum of $2,836,982, representing the state assessment on the MTA and its constituent agencies for the Public Work Enforcement Fund for the calendar year 2013.
Bob, do you want to mention this, what we talked about, or?
Certainly.
Yeah, I think we should.
The total amount that we're going to pay this year is roughly $2.8 million. The assessment to us is 0.1% of effective contracts that we let. As you can imagine, we're going to be letting a lot more contracts over the next few years pursuant to Sandy-related work. We need to talk with the General Counsel, but it does seem to make sense to us that if this is a budget item for the state of New York, that they were anticipating receiving a certain amount of funds that they use to offset Department of Labor costs to monitor prevailing wage, that if we're now doing additional work that was not expected, that we may try to seek a waiver on the fee relating to Sandy's. So Andrew mentioned that.
Jim is here, right? Jim, you got it?
I heard you.
Good. Get to work.
So we need a motion on that, right? Yeah.
What is this fund? How long have we been subject to this charge?
It says Chapter 511, the laws of 1995, so whether it was before that, but
And we've been paying this fraction of contract ever since?
yes.
Yeah.
And this is nominally for what state cost?
This is to the Department of Labor for enforcement, I guess, of prevailing wage.
What does that mean?
It means they're taking $2 million from us.
They monitor contracts to make sure that the contractors are paying prevailing wage.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's it.
For the city of New York, the controller of the city of New York, does the same thing at the state level. It is the State Department of Labor.
That performs the prevailing wage enforcement function.
And who is subject to this charge among state agencies?
I think we all are.
Yeah, it says
Probably.
requires state agencies and authorities, so I think it's all encompassing.
How do you qualify as a state authority for this purpose?
I don't know.
I'll have to check the legislation, but if it's similar to other provisions, it would be being a state authority, the majority of whose members are appointed by the governor of the state of New York.
I mean, do we
Yeah, but
have,
the obvious
do
problem
we
is
have
that
any
going
evidence?
forward, we're going to be spending, what, $4 or $5 billion, Tom, on Sandy-related work. So this number is not going to just be $1 million or $2 million, whatever it's going to be. It's going to escalate substantially over the next 4 years as the work schedule progresses. That's why we have to look into it. It's going to be, I don't know the number, but it's going to be substantially more than what it is.
Do we have any evidence of how much money the state actually spends on this purpose?
We don't.
Not that I know
Did you
of.
say no?
Yes.
Thank you.
So we need a motion.
So we, Doug, would you make the motion, please, so that
We
What
need,
do you-
we're asking the board to authorize the sum of $2,836,982.
okay, is there a motion, please? Second, all in favor? Okay, and then you'll let us know, Jim, where we stand with this, right, going forward?
Some degree, like the waiver we got,
On the BICS
the
bond charge.
same issue, basically.
Yep.
Yeah, it is.
That's what brought it to mind, when we were talking, when we were meeting
Is it
earlier.
quite the same?
Whether vote discretionary, that one can be waived. I don't know whether this one can be waived by statute.
Sure.
But they're-
Report and information items are next. The first is the station maintenance billings for the period April 1st, 2012 to March 31st, 2013, which is detailed on page Roman numeral 5-2. Are there any questions? It's just an information item. I don't need a vote on that, no. The second information item is the annual pension fund report as of December 31st, 2012, and that's detailed on Roman numeral 5-7. Also an information item. Are there any questions on that?
No questions, then go ahead with the.
Okay, we have 4 competitive procurements for headquarters for a grand total of $285,538. I need a motion for that.
Okay, a motion, please. Second, please. Second? Second. Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? So moved, Doug.
Okay, moving to the agencies. There are no agency action items, but I'm going to go through the procurements for the individual agencies. For Metro North, there's one non-competitive sole source procurement for a grand total of $300,990.
Motion, please. Second, please. All in favor? Any opposed? So moved, Doug.
For Long Island Railroad, there are 2 procurements for a grand total of $2,784,331, one being a non-competitive sole source procurement, and one a competitive procurement for ratification of a large modification to an East Side Access contract managed by MTA Capital Construction.
Motion, please. Second. All in favor? Any opposed? So moved, Doug.
Thanks. Moving to New York City Transit MTA bus operations, there are 5 procurements for a grand total of $52,486,697, 3 being non-competitive procurements, 1 jointly with MTA Bus, and 2 are competitive procurements for RFPs, 1 for MTA Bus.
Motion, please. Second. Second. All in favor? Any opposed? So moved, Doug.
Moving to bridges and tunnels, there are 2 competitive procurements for large modifications for a grand total of $3,815,000.
Motion, please. Second. All in favor? Any opposed? So moved.
Okay, there are no items for FIMTAC. I just want to point out that within the book, we have MTA consolidated reports, which contain March financials, and due to the timing of this committee and when we typically have financial data available, I'm pleased to announce that in about 2 weeks, we'll be posting the April financials online. And that would conclude the financial portion of the meeting.
Okay. Jeff, would you take us through the real estate items?
Thanks, Andrew. There are 13 action items for your consideration and approval this month, each the subject of a separate staff summary. Unless there are questions about any of the other items, I'd just like to highlight two of them because they bear on our larger initiatives that we've discussed here. The first is a relatively small item, but augurs well for our ongoing cooperation with the city. This is the first of the so-called master lease properties that we're moving through the joint marketing effort with EDC that I described to you some months ago. It's $475,000 for a former substation. Not quite ready to bring the other items to you yet, but I'm happy to say that there are a couple of more substantial properties that look to be yielding about $50 million total for our capital program, so stay tuned for that.
And Jeff, we talked about, you said that in September you do a complete review of all the ongoing major real estate programs and operations that we have going.
Well, I'm very glad to do that. I had thought you were talking about the office plan consolidation project, but I'll format that however you like.
I think it's been, some of these been a year since you reported on them, some less, but I do think we can't do it at the July meeting because obviously of the budget, but in September, I think it'd be a good idea, September, October, maybe you want to do some each month, but I do think you should review the whole
No, very good. I'll do
things that are going on, because there's a lot of things going on that really affect our budgets, affect the policies that we've laid out, including the headquarters here, and I think we should, review, have a recap for the board.
Very good. I'll plan to do that in September. Thanks.
Okay.
The other item is a little bit against the grain. I just wanted to explain. As you know, we're working very hard to consolidate our office space and specifically concentrating downtown to the end of marketing this property. We expect to be out in the next week or so with our RFP for this property. Some mention was made previously of Sandy. We have some very extraordinary short-term emergency, previously unanticipated hiring needs, both to some extent in-house and also just engagement of consultants specifically for the capital program management group within transit. There's a need to accommodate about 170 heads, and we looked very hard at whether we could do that at 2 Broadway consistent with moving forward aggressively on our right-sizing plan, concluded that we could not. We need pre-built space that's ready-made for the purpose, so we're going to be leasing for just 3 years with 2 one-year options, some space at 1 Pierpont Plaza not far from our facility in downtown Brooklyn for that purpose. It's going to be about $1.5 million a year. It's 44,000 feet at $35 a foot. Necessary evil, I'm afraid, but again, it's specifically to accommodate this work that's being done, time-sensitive work being done largely on the federal dime, and that's why we're doing this. Okay. Any questions? If not, I'd ask for approval of the 13 items, please.
So may we please have a motion to approve the 13 items that are outlined in our book? Second, please. All in favor? Any opposed? So moved.
Thanks.
Okay, so we now have to have a motion to go into executive session pursuant to Section 105H of the Open Meetings Law to address a matter relating to the proposed acquisition, sale, or exchange of securities under circumstances where public publicity would substantially affect the value thereof. May I have a motion? Second, please. All in favor? Okay, we're now going to go into executive session. Thank you, everybody.